My name is Reggie Nelson. I currently work in investment management. I work in corporate finance. I have a podcast show on BBC called Your Work, Your Money. I have the privilege of traveling around the world and across the UK to share my story and also talk about things that I'm really passionate about, such as education, social mobility, diversity, and the overall story and narrative around resilience. And I also sit on the board of a few charities and group chair an accountancy institute. My journey thus far, I grew up in a council estate in East London. I grew up with two alcoholic parents. So my mum and dad were both addicted to alcohol. And because of that, there wasn't really much stability at home. So what I used to do is go outside a lot of the time. And because I used to play with people my age, when they had to go home because they had curfew, I would just go a few meters down my estate and play with the older guys. And being around these older guys, you saw a lot of things that someone my age probably shouldn't have been exposed to. They were our role models in that sense because they were the people that had everything that we aspired to have. Because we grew up in an environment that was really poverty driven. So growing up, we didn't have any money. My mum worked insanely hard to provide for me and the family, and she had to work even harder when I was about 10 or 11 because that's when my dad left us. So it was just me, my mum, and I have an older sister as well. Around that time, fortunately, my mum got off the alcohol, so she managed to sober up, and she's been alcohol free since then. But I still didn't have that male guidance growing up, and because of that, I kind of got led. I was going down a particular path that wasn't positive at all. I ended up getting excluded from school. Ended up just getting involved in the wrong crowd. To paint a picture, amongst the friends that I grew up with, the second half of my friends, over two handful of them have gone to prison at least once. And I've lost about 3 or 4 of my friends to knife and gun crime as well. So that was the route that a lot of my friends were taking, and I was amongst those people. But I had a lifeline, which was football. And football was my one-way ticket to become this first generation wealth builder for my family. That was the thing that was gonna really elevate me from where I was into the lifestyle and the quality of life that I wanted for my family. And it wasn't about having a mansion with like 9 bedrooms and all that stuff. It was just about being able to not worry about money. I didn't want to worry about not being able to buy something, or not worry about if the washing machine breaks, how are you gonna fix it? Which was a regular case from my household, right? When something breaks, it wasn't a simple case of just going out and buying another one. It was like, damn, how are we gonna almost rectify this? How are we gonna overcome this small hurdle? I've seen my mum wash clothes in the bathtub because the washing machine was broken. It's just these little things that when you see growing up, you just say to yourself, if I do have kids, I don't want them to see this or experience this. So football was a thing that I was going to pursue down, and I played football at quite a high level. Schoolboys, I played at youth professional level, youth semi-professional level. I was in and around the youth pro game, and at 16, I signed a contract where it allowed me to study and play football, and that was in Woking, an area in Woking. So I was traveling from London to Woking every single day, and that was good for me because it allowed me to get away from the environment that I was in. So when things started to propel even further in terms of the criminality and the things that were going on in my estate, I was away from that. So Monday to Friday, I was basically out of London. And that really helped me because it kept me away from trouble. At 16, my dad was made redundant. So at this point, we wasn't living together. And he came back to my house to almost seeking for help. And we as a family allowed him to come back in, and he was still addicted to alcohol. So because it was back in the house, there was that alcoholism in the house, but I wanted to build that relationship with him. And I think at this point as well, that's when I found my faith as well. So faith plays a big part in my journey, has played a big part in my journey and still does today. And when I sort of found my faith, that's when I was like, I don't want to hold this revolt or this grudge against my dad for leaving the family for so many years. I just want to rebuild this bridge. And from a young age, because I still lacked a male role model, I wanted to find that in my dad because, I did look up to him, but it was just a case where he was going through a hard time and, the alcohol was really taking its toll. So he came back to live with us at 16. And then at 17, I unfortunately lost my dad because of the alcohol. So there was a day when he woke up. It was Father's Day 2013. I'll never forget this day. And he woke up, he wasn't feeling too well. And I remember he came into the living room and he just felt ill. Like you can see he had a pale look on his face. And I called my mum, I was like, oh yeah, I don't know if Dad's feeling okay. And she called the ambulance just as a safety measure because he had diabetes. So we thought, oh, it's just the diabetes playing up. But it was a bit more serious than that. Obviously at the time we didn't know. So I left the house. It was a Sunday, so I was going to church that morning. And then I called my mum afterwards, just saying, oh, how's everything going? And I went to the hospital. And I'd never been to a hospital before, so I didn't know what the machines meant and how things were separated. But he was just in the bed, and you see these machines and all the wires and all the numbers on the machines and stuff, and I didn't know what any of that meant. And when I went home, someone explained, well, at the time I didn't know what it was, but he was in a coma. So that bed he was in a coma, but I didn't know what a coma was. So I just thought it was just in a hospital bed. Didn't think too much of it. Next day, it was a Monday, I went to training, and then I came back and my mum told me that my dad didn't make it. So that was a catalyst for me, because that was the moment where I thought, I need to do something that is gonna generate something long term. I can't be in a position whereby I don't have the keys to create a better life for my family. That was always the main goal for me. So at 17, I decided to just quit football. Didn't want to play it anymore. But then, because I had never really studied much in school, because in schools, when you're playing football, it's all eggs in one basket. There's no real alternative. That is your one-way ticket to success. And if football doesn't work out, then there are very limited options for you. So at 17, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And that's when I had to go on a quest and just dig deeper within myself to see what it is that I actually wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to generate wealth, and an idea was in my head to just go and knock on people's doors and just ask them how they got rich and how they amassed their wealth. At the time, it was like a silly idea at the time, and I did put it off for a while, but there was one day I just thought to myself, look, if I don't do it, then, if I do it and I get a no, then I'm back to where I started. So I've kind of got nothing to lose. So I just thought, let me just go and ask these people how they amass their wealth. So I researched in Google richest areas in London, and an area called Kensington and Chelsea came up. So I went over to Kensington and Chelsea, and as soon as I came out of the station, it was Gloucester Road Station. The first car I saw was a Range Rover, I saw an Aston Martin, and the roads were just so clean. I can't describe it. The roads were, you knew you was in a different place. And it's a funny story, and I always say this as well. When I went into Starbucks, but I never gone to Starbucks in my life. I went into Starbucks and I was hungry, and I saw a sandwich there, and a sandwich was like £5.50. I was like, I'm not paying £5.50 for a sandwich. But I say that because it was just a very, very stark contrast between being able to get one piece chicken, a burger and chips for £2 to paying £6 for a sandwich. So that was the kind of disparity that I was faced with when I got to Kensington and Chelsea. So I was there, and then I started to ask random people on the streets, what did you do to amass your wealth? How did you become so rich, or rich enough to live in the wealthiest area in London? To my surprise, or not to my surprise, people weren't really stopping to talk to me. I didn't go there in a shirt, tie and trousers. I went there in like a jacket, jeans and trainers. So I wasn't like the most presentable person on the day. So people weren't really stopping to talk to me. However, someone did give me £40 for asking them the question, which kind of gave me a bit more encouragement to keep going. So I did, and I was in the area for about 3 hours just asking people. Asking people wasn't working, so I started to go to the different hotels in the area and ask the people at the reception what type of people stay in these hotels. Again, I didn't really get the tangible answers that I was looking for, so I started to knock on people's doors. So I went door to door, just knocking on people's doors, asking them, what skills did you have, or what skills have you acquired that's allowed you to live in this area? Again, people weren't opening the door, people were kind of telling me to go away. One person thought that I was going to rob him, which again, till this day, is fairly amusing. But there was one door that ultimately changed my life forever. I knocked on the door, and the lady opens the door to me. And when I asked her the question, what skills did you have that's allowed you to become rich? She asked if it was part of a school project, and I said, no, I'm doing it off my own back. This is something I just want to do for myself. I'm here by myself. I want to know what skills that you have that's allowed you to live here. She invites me into the house. She sits me down, and we just started talking. And about 5-10 minutes into our conversation, her husband, his name was Quentin Price. He walked into the room, and yeah, that day changed my life forever, because when he came in, sat down, he explained to me what he was doing at the time. And at the time, it was like the equivalent of a CIO for the largest asset management company on the planet, called BlackRock. And I had never heard of BlackRock in my life. I had no experience of finance at all. And he said to me, look, if finance is something that I would consider, then he would see what he can do in terms of giving me visibility into the sector. So he took down my email, and he said he'll email me on the Monday. And to be honest, I didn't think he was going to email me, because I thought, I don't know, I wasn't really that optimistic after that conversation. Not because of anything he said, but I didn't want to get my hopes up. But that Monday, he sent me an email saying, look, BlackRock are doing an insight day for undergraduates, and I know that you're in college but if you want to come down, then it'll be good just to see what it's like. So I think it was a couple of weeks later, I went down to BlackRock, and that was my first time in the city of London, first time in the financial district. I turned up with a shirt. I remember my tie. My tie was so short. I had a Nike side pouch. I had trousers that were way too big for me. I looked very, very out of place. And I spent the day at BlackRock. And after that, Quentin got one of his colleagues called Nathan to sit in a room with me and just talk to me and just see what it is that I wanted to do. That conversation then led to a week-long internship in the summer of 2014. So I did an internship at BlackRock in a department called Fundamental Equities, which is essentially investing. And then that week-long internship, after that I had a meeting with Quentin, my mum and I in this room. And Quentin encouraged me to go to university, which at the time wasn't something I wanted to do, because I never saw university as a viable route for me. University was one of those things where I thought, I'm not academically bright. At the time, I didn't think I was academically bright. And yeah, I didn't ever see myself going past sort of the sixth form college stage in terms of my education. But his advice, I decided to take it on board. And that summer, I enrolled into university. I studied economics and Mandarin alongside my degree. I remember my first couple months of university was a steep learning curve. I never touched economics in my life. The last time I did maths was at GCSE. So I was kind of on the back foot in terms of my degree. My first exam, I remember scoring 25%, which is a fail. And I was actually very, very close to leaving my degree, because I thought, I've spent a couple hours revising for this exam. It's probably the easiest exam that I'm gonna get along this 3-year period of university. And I've scored one of the lowest in my cohort. But I remember just talking to Quentin, and he just gave me this unwavering hope, and just his mentorship made a very, very big difference in that moment in time. And I went into my next exam after that, and I scored 82%, and then I scored 84% after that. And then I just started racking in first class 2-1s, and I found my feet academically, and I found what worked for me. And yeah, I kind of carried that along my 3 years of university. And throughout my university career, I did 4 or 5 internships at various asset managers and a hedge fund in the city. So I graduated in 2017, and since then I've been able to do a lot of things in terms of providing visibility for others the same way that Quinton provided visibility for me. So there was 3 things that Quinton really gave me, and I talk a lot about these 3 things, and I bracket it under this thing called the power of mentoring, because I honestly believe that mentoring is something that truly transformed my life forever. And it was visibility, guidance, and hope. With mentoring, I was able to see what was available for me, which I wasn't able to see before. I lived 25 minutes away from the city of London, but I'd never been to the city of London. So mentorship gave me that right visibility to say, hey, this is what's available for you. It then gave me guidance. So once I knew what was available, mentorship allowed me to see what route I needed to take in order to get to the end destination. And visibility and guidance just gave me hope that things could change for my family, hope that I could provide a better life for my family, hope that I could establish a viable career for myself. And mentorship has been able to do that for me. And since graduating, I've been able to do some really humbling and amazing things. I did a documentary with BBC on my story in 2018. That led to doing various different interviews with other news platforms and stuff. And I did an interview with This Morning with ITV. And then I got a call up from Downing Street by the previous Prime Minister, Theresa May. She was working on a race disparity audit project and she had seen my documentary with the BBC and wanted me to work on a campaign with her. So I went over to Westminster and we did the campaign together, and I did various other announcements and stuff with the Cabinet Office after that. And that just led me to do a range of other things, like traveling to different institutions to not only share my story, but to talk about things like education, about social mobility, diversity, and genuine things that I'm passionate about. Today, I also do some youth mentoring as well. So I just try to help people that had a similar background and story to me, to give them what Quinton gave me. I'm trying to be a Quinton for other people and just give them that right visibility, that right guidance, and hopefully give them the hope that things can change for them. So in terms of best advice I'll give to anyone that was in my position or any young person coming up, it would honestly just be embrace rejection, man. Embrace rejection, because I almost feel like along my life, I've had to face numerous amounts of rejection, and rejections where I thought at the time didn't even make sense to me, or the barriers or the hardships that I had faced that didn't make sense to me at the time. Now sitting here and being in the position that I'm in now, I can see that everything happened for my own journey. It's almost like it molded me to get to where I am today. So when I look back on my journey, I see all the different hardships, I see all the different barriers and all the different hurdles that I had to step over. But that's made me into the person that I am today. And I always say, like, I wouldn't change anything about my upbringing. I wouldn't change anything about the different routes that I've had to take onto my journey, because it's provided me with this relentless tenacity that I have today, and the soft skills and the character that I have built for myself. It's allowed me to break down so many other doors and to go into rooms, and just allowed me to own certain things that I wouldn't have been able to own if I didn't go through what I went through, right? So one piece of advice I'll give is embrace your rejections, and just know that the hardest moments always create the best stories. That's something I've learned. My hard moments that I've been through are there to serve other people, are there to show people that, hey, if you've gone through something similar to what I've gone through, then you can also overcome it. I always say that I'm not better than anyone else. I'm not sort of smarter than anyone else. I just had an idea, and I had this tenacity and drive inside of me to change the reality of my life at the time. And that was the one thing that fueled me to keep going. So if I was to give any piece of advice, if it was one piece of advice, I would say, look, embrace your rejections and don't take no as gospel. Use that to fuel you, use that to keep going, and just remember that the hardest moments always create the best stories.